those things were the tools, more or less, to build the new world, right? And
the
reason,
gun, taking it by force.
Yes.
The printing press.
Yep.
Print history. Print what you want history to be.
Printing what you want in history.
And the painters by painting what you want history.
What God looks like. Since recorded history, bro. Since recorded history. Kings, queens, monarchy, churches, governments, right, have always been the largest patrons of the arts and have always sparked the largest art movements, what we're talking about. So if you want to take it back to the Renaissance, right? The Renaissance was a church movement, bro, where the church and major merchants, right, rich families were funding the arts, but it was church-led.
I'm still not really getting why the Pope cared. Like, why did he make this church law that wealthy people had to patronize the arts?
Well, I think there's a lot of things, right? We can take it further back, right? We can take it to the Egyptians. Like, why did they care, right? Like when we look at hieroglyphics, or we look at, large sculptures that are shaped like a man. They call them caryatids. Sculptures that are shaped like people, columns that are shaped like people, right? Why, right? Well, I think on the one hand, it's a show of this is us, right? It's like it's in the same sense as like making your mark, right? Putting a tag on a wall. It's like I was here, right? But at the other hand, it's educating your people on what has happened in history. Is educating your people on the sciences or whatever. We look at hieroglyphics. Hieroglyphics was not only decoration, but it was a language. It was the written language of the ancient Egyptians or Kemetans, right? Mm-hmm. And so the images you would see on those walls, it was not just there as historic record, it was also there for teaching purposes, telling of their spiritual systems or whatever. So people use art historically for all types of reasons, transmitting messages to other people. But so all of this is to say that art and the government has always been intertied, right? When you look at, this is like, okay, when we talk about the church, right? If you look at what they call the New World, America, between like the 1400s up until like the 1600s, right? When the Pope and the kings and queens were giving people charters to go look for new land in the New World, right? Well, there's something very interesting that happened in the 1400s. And this has to do with art, right? So in the 1400s, 3 things were invented within that century that contributed to colonialism, right? One was the handgun, like the.
Of course, one was a fucking weapon.
Yeah, it was a gun, right? Yeah. Not the handgun, but it was like a musket. It was like a musket type of gun, right?
Yeah, single fire.
Yeah, single fire gun, right? So that was
reload that bitch. You gotta
right, and of course the Asians had that technology for a long time prior, but Europeans got it and made it what we know is now the gun, right? Okay. So that happened in the 1400s. The other thing that happened in the 1400s was Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press in Germany, which was the first mechanized printing press.
It started rolling out newspapers and
books.
Stuff like that. Books.
And the first book that was printed, of course, was the Bible.
Okay.
For a long time, it was the Bible, right? And also in the 1400s, Leonardo da Vinci painted The Last Supper.
Oh, I point to the Mona Lisa. Okay, the Last Supper.
Yeah. Which is the European
What was so
of Christ.
significant about that? And if you want to think about that as an invention, like compared to the gun and the printing press.
Okay. So Leonardo da Vinci was a prominent artist, statesman, architect, war machine guy.
And also just like a secondary question to that, like you said, how did that contribute to colonialism?
Okay. So if you look at the Renaissance, right? The Renaissance started in the 1300s. And the person who was given the sort of the title as being the father of the Renaissance is a guy named Giotto, right? He's from Italy. And Giotto was around in the 1300s. And Giotto is very significant for Europeans because Giotto was the first prominent painter to paint biblical figures in a European context, meaning with white skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. Prior to that, everything was in Byzantine influence, which was almost a Mediterranean, dark skin, sometimes even African look, right? And Giotto was a student of an artist named Cimabue. And Cimabue was also, an Italian, European, but Cimabue was painting in the classic Byzantine style. And so when you go to like the old churches in like Turkey and stuff like that, or even Russia, right? You see that like heavily like gold leaf.
Is this why, just not to cut you off, just side note, do you remember a few months back when like there was a story that came out that Putin had this figure of like a black Jesus?
The black Madonna, yep, and the black Jesus, yep.
Yeah.
So
that's why.
So that is the Byzantine influence of art.
Okay.
Right? So everything from, the times of like the first few centuries of the modern era, right? Like right after Jesus, right? Up until the 1300s, right? Was primarily Byzantine influence when it came to Christianity. Of course, there were certain things that were floating out there, in certain parts of Europe. But most of the artwork that we know is associated to Christianity or the story of Jesus was of Byzantine influence. So it was like that heavy Mediterranean, gold leaf, dark skin, dark hair look. And Giotto came in and created the European and replaced the dark skin, dark hair look and made all of the biblical figures basically look like his models. You know what I mean? And so what this did was sort of fashion biblical characters in a Eurocentric context for the first time. And so over the next 100 years, we get to
The Last Supper.
The Last Supper, Leonardo da Vinci, right? Who now they've been mastering, humanistic painting for the last 100 years. You know what I'm saying? And so now not only are they painting biblical figures in a European context, but they're getting really good at painting realistic looking pictures. You know what I mean?
Almost. So I guess these new pictures that they were painting look more realistic than the old Byzantine styled ones.
Yep. And they're white men.
You
know what I'm saying? So now it's a perfect storm, right? So now you got, and the other thing that happened in the 1400s was Christopher Columbus. You see what I'm saying? So, and a lot of those early guys from Europe going over, right? So you got the invention of the gun,
printing press,
the printing press,
and Last Supper,
the first image of the classical white Jesus, and the first European expeditions across the Atlantic.
Okay.
Right? That is the structure of the New World. In God we trust. That's what's still influencing us to this day.
Wait, what do you mean that's the structure of the New World?
Like that, those things were the tools, more or less, to build the New World, right? And
the
reason,
gun, taking it by force.
Yes.
The printing press.
Yep.
Print history. Print what you want history to be.
Printing what you want in history.
And the painters by painting what you want history.
What God looks like. Okay. Right? So now they have a man who is God in this image form, right? Which has been used to control people on a lot of levels.